Hey everybody, welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Reuben, how you doing?
I'm doing well. One of those rare non-season, off-season, I guess we call it, off-season weeks where we have 3 consecutive podcasts.
Yeah, that's true. If you're tuning into this pod today on the normally scheduled Thursday pod and you're going, why aren't they talking about Dallas Goedert? We did a whole emergency podcast on Wednesday. So if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and pause this one, go back and watch the other one. If you're listening on your device, there's another one in there for you. Go listen to the Dallas Goedert one. We get into how that move came together, what it means for the team this year going forward, the position as a whole. So I thought that was a good conversation about Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, those emergency pods are always happy days.
They're happy days, but it's also funny because I know the second I look at Twitter or anywhere, it's like, when's the pod coming out? Emergency pod, and we come through.
Always do.
New Pope went to Villanova. You see this?
Oh, did they pick
They
Dante
picked the Pope.
DiVincenzo?
It's Dante. No, they have a new Pope. We went to Villanova.
That's pretty cool.
He's from Chicago. Apparently, he's a Cubs fan. That's all I got on that. First American Pope.
I knew he was American. I did not know he went to Villanova.
Yeah. A lot of bad Villanova jokes going around already, and I'm part of it, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Anything else you want to chat about before we get into the football stuff? You got anything else?
No, I think we should get right into it.
Okay, I like that. We promised we'd do this at some point very soon. I had my 53-man roster projection. It came out last week. I always do one after the draft just to kind of set the table a little bit going into OTAs and going into training camp, just to kind of, we have to have a jumping off point for the roster. But I want to go through it position by position, see if you agree with some of my decisions, if you disagree with some of them. Already feeling good about the tight end. I had Goddard on there before we knew he was definitely back. So off to a good start. But we'll begin now today with quarterback. Obviously, Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee are on the roster. I have Kyle McCord, the 6th-round pick, making the team over Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario, and I don't think it's particularly close. I think they just took Dorian Thompson-Robinson off the Browns' hands. But look, maybe he comes in, has a great camp, and McCord struggles. But I think when you draft a guy, he's your own guy. There's a reason for it, and I would expect he'd be the number 3.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not a definite, but for Dorian Thompson-Robinson to beat him out, I think it would need to be like very clear and apparent. I don't think it could be close and, it's kind of like a split vote. I think it would have to be like a unanimous thing where, okay, he's just better right now. We can't justify cutting him in favor of the rookie, but I don't think that's going to happen, but that's what it would take.
Yeah, and also, you can always put Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the practice squad if you lose him, you lose him. Not sure they're ready to risk that with the rookie. They probably wouldn't lose him, but you might.
And look, the hope with McCord is that eventually he becomes Tanner McKee, that in 2 years' time, you bump him up and he's the backup. Maybe Tanner signs somewhere else and he gets a chance to compete for a starting gig. And you say, okay, that's the whole goal of keeping this pipeline. Either you have the guys to become backups or you have the trade assets to get something back for them.
I think that's why they call it the quarterback factory.
Yeah, precisely. What do you expect from Tanner in camp and then in the season?
Yeah, I think he's really good. And sometimes it's a mistake to look. He played well against a bad Giants team. He played well in limited, but boy, the way he throws the ball, his poise, the way he sees the field, he uses all his weapons. He threw to, I think in the one start, he threw to like 9 different guys, which I believe Jalen only did once. They're different. That's not a criticism of Jalen. It's just he's a guy that sees the whole field and is going to use all his weapons. And I think he's got a really quick mind. I think he sees things quickly. He processes quickly. I think he has a chance to be a pretty good quarterback in this league.
Yeah, they trade away Kenny Pickett, obviously, this offseason because, like we all saw it. They probably should have made this switch in the playoffs last year, and I understand why they didn't do that for the locker room dynamic of it all. But anyone who watched that has to think that Ken McHugh's a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, and I think Kenny Pickett gives you look, there's a reason he was a first-round pick, and he does some things well. He's very tough, but, yeah, if you had one game that you had to win, you're gonna start Tanner McKee.
Yeah. Honestly, the reason he was a first round pick is because that quarterback draft was awful.
Yeah, it was a reach, but, um, I mean, he's won some games in the league. I think he's 15-10 as a starter, so he's not the worst quarterback ever. Um, I can tell you who is, but I'm not gonna go there. Do you know who the last Eagle to have a passer rating of 0 in a game is?
No.
It's Pat Ryan in 1991 in that 23-0 loss, to Washington at RFK Stadium. He was 4 for 14 for 26 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
3 picks will get you.
Yeah. In relief of injured Jim McMahon. Anyway, um, yeah, I think Tanner's gonna end up going somewhere.
Does it ever
And
bother you that that stuff is just like populating space in your brain?
well, there's not a whole lot else there. So, I mean, it does not bother me.
Like, are there days where you're like, I don't know where my keys are, but I know the last time a quarterback had a passer rating of 0?
Is there a day there that doesn't happen?
Yeah, fair.
And
I
by the
think
way,
about
this
that sometimes myself. I'm like, why do I, like a random Eagle from 2016, like, well, why is that guy still populating space in my brain? I feel like there's finite amount of space, and it's being used by frivolous stuff.
I think we only use a very small percentage of our brain, though. So there's a lot of
Some more
room.
than others, but yeah,
Yeah, well, that's true. By the way, speaking of losing keys, have you seen my sunglasses? I thought I left them on my desk, and they're not there.
I have not.
I've gone through at least 20 pairs this year.
I was just about to ask, but I thought that might be a sore subject.
Yeah, I'm not too bright.
See
A
what you did
little
there.
sunglass joke. Anyway, let's get back to that roster, Dave.
Okay, let's not go too deep on Jalen Hurts. I don't think we need to talk much about Jalen today. We talk about the starting quarterback quite a bit. At running back, I kept 3: Saquon Barkley, AJ Dillon, and Will Shipley. You can maybe convince me on 4. You can maybe talk to me about AJ Dillon's not going to be healthy. He's not even going to be on the roster. This is a sneaky need or a position of need. You could sell me on all that, but for right now, I have those 3 on the team.
I I'm not so sure about AJ Dillon. Like a lot of these guys, they're here, they're going to get an opportunity. I'm not sure what he has left. I'm not sure where he is right now. I would take him off my roster. I would not have him on my 53.
So would you have a different running back there? Or would you have 2 running backs?
Well, no, I'd have another running back. It would probably be somebody who's not on the roster right now. Maybe I don't know. I don't believe in him at this point in his career. He's been a good player at times, but when you see that career trending downward, and maybe getting behind this O line will and being healthy will jumpstart his career, but it's really rare for guys to kind of reverse that trend, a trend over numerous years. Um, I think they like Shipley. I think he's a good receiving back, and we'll see who else is here. But I think those 2 is a starting point. But I don't have Dylan on my roster.
Okay.
I could very well be wrong.
Yeah, when you're actually putting the roster together, though, it would look real weird having 2 running backs.
I'm not going to keep 2 running backs. I'm just saying the third one won't be Dylan.
Okay. Any name? Will it,
I don't
like,
know. Somebody who's not here yet.
okay, that's not a name, but okay. How about any of the other guys on the roster intriguing? Montreal Johnson, Sean Derrick Powell, the 2 rookies, Lou Nichols still sticking around?
Lou Nichols is a guy they seem to like. He's a inside runner, tough guy. You want to put him on there? I don't think it'll be him, but you know, he'll get a lot of opportunities in camp, and we'll see what he looks like. Could be
Any
a
surprise they cut Ty Davis Price?
little bit. He
Guy who
was
had a good offseason with them last year, a good summer, was, on the bubble a little bit.
Yeah, I was a little surprised about that, and I believe he was a fairly high draft pick, right? 49ers,
Third rounder. Yeah.
3rd rounder of the Niners, so, yeah, I thought he might be in that mix. That could be a sign that they really like um, where the kid from the Packers is, um, after seeing him, after getting him in the building for a few weeks, but that did surprise me.
So if you're not a believer in AJ Dillon, do you think Will Shipley is ready to be the two, or do you think if they go out and sign an outside running back, they bring in that two? You know what I mean? Like, where would that,
Yeah, I know.
if there's a player to be named later, where does he slot in?
I think they might like Shipley as a 2. I think he has a chance to be a 2. We didn't really see a whole lot of him, last year. I saw enough of him catching the ball that I feel pretty good about his receiving ability. He had the long run in the playoff game, which was a lot of fun, but I don't know if I don't know what kind of runner he is. If you give him like, if he's gotta play, if Saquon got hurt and Shipley had to start 2 games, I don't know if he's a 15 to 17 carry guy. I don't know what that would look like. Um, but I think there's something there. I think he's got some ability.
Yeah, I do too. It's kind of rare for a rookie fourth round running back to really not play much at all, but you had Saquon getting so much of the workload, and then Kenny Gainwell was a really solid two, kind of filling in everywhere else, and those guys stayed healthy, so you just didn't get to see very much of Shipley.
Yeah, yeah, at the end of a couple blowouts, and that was about it. So, Gainwell, they'll miss Gainwell a little bit. He was a guy you could always count on as that backup. Played well when he had to start or get elevated carries. I don't know how he'll do in an expanded role, but I really like him as a 2.
Who do you think likes Kenny Gainwell more, you or Nick Sirianni?
Probably me.
You guys are both big Kenny G fans.
But I mean, well, be careful what you say. I'm not a Kenny G fan. I'm a Kenny Gainwell fan, though. But I mean, I don't think he's a 1. So I think maybe Nick does. I don't know. But I like the player as a backup. Yeah.
Okay. This is the first time I've done this in my years covering the team. I have a fullback on the roster, like an actual full-time fullback. I kept Ben Van Sumeren on the team. He made the switch from linebacker to fullback for good this offseason, has a new number, a running back number that he doesn't have to report eligible all the time. I was on the fence about whether or not to keep him. It normally doesn't bode well for a player when they're a few years into their career and they switch positions, but this one felt different to me because I think the Eagles showed that they want to have a fullback body or at least someone who can lead block on the team. And if it's not him, they don't have another guy to do it.
Now you said he's changed to fullback for good. Do we know that? He'll never go back to linebacker?
Well, I mean, it's a full time switch. I can't say for good. Maybe.
Well, you
uh,
did say for good. I
okay.
just don't know. Uh, I mean, I kinda thought he had a little something as a linebacker.
Yeah. I mean, right now he's a fullback.
Right.
Like he's a full
Um,
time fullback. When they re signed him, he was a fullback. I guess by for good, I mean for now, but
yeah,
it's a full time switch. It's not like he's toggling back and forth.
right. And he's a really good special teamer. Wherever he's playing, whatever position he's playing, he's a good special teamer. I think he'll be on the roster.
Yeah,
I
no,
do
we
because
we have to see if he's healthy. He's coming off a pretty significant knee injury, but he's already pretty much full go, I believe, is the last I heard. So I think he'll be out there at OTAs, which is nice for him. Uh, and I think it was telling last year that after he got hurt, they brought in Kari Blasingame as a fullback. Now they brought him on the practice squad, but they kept elevating him. Blasingame played a bunch of special teams. It shows that they want that. They want to have a fullback on the game day roster. It's just another wrinkle to an already really effective run game. And right now, he's the only guy on the team to do it. Maybe Ty Robinson in some fun situations like he did at Nebraska, but that's not going to be an all the time type of thing.
right, it would be fun to see here and there. I wonder if, like, if Kevin Patullo wants to throw more than Kellen Moore. and that ratio goes up, and maybe, maybe Saquon ends up not running as much as last year. Is a fullback still like in a Kevin Patullo offense? Does the fullback still have that same importance? I don't know.
I don't know. It was funny. I was on the radio the other day and I got asked about like if Patullo is going to want to throw the ball a lot more than Kellen Moore. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he was passing game coordinator. But I mean, everything in Kellen Moore's past would tell you that he's going to throw the ball an awful lot too. And he
Right.
tried to early in the season and then it changed. So I don't know if just making that switch at coordinator is going to really change the complexion of the offense that much.
Yeah, I don't know that either, but I think it is something to keep an eye on. But I just realized blasting game and passing game actually rhyme. You could do a little haiku with this whole concept.
A haiku would be tough. A lot of syllables in the blasting game. Yeah, that's a lot.
I'm sure you could find a way.
Okay. Maybe I'll have a
We're gonna do
haiku
an
buddy on.
entire podcast this summer, Dave and I just writing haikus about fullbacks.
I like that. The last fullback the Eagles had before, who was it? I mean, Doug toyed around with the idea a little bit.
Yeah, they had some guys come in and out, but as far as a full-time guy in the 53, it's been quite a while.
Yeah. Apparently, Jeffrey Lurie was on WIP, and John Ritchie was one of the hosts. So I think it came up, but Lurie seemed on board with the fullback.
Why wouldn't he be on board with it? Whatever Howie brings to the roster.
Okay. Let's go to receiver. I kept 5 on this roster, and I think the first 3 are locks: AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson. If you want to say Dotson's not a lock, fine, but the top 2 obviously are. I think Dotson's pretty close to being a lock. After that, I mean, there's not a ton of depth here. I kept Johnny Wilson and Anais Smith. You could say Terrace Marshall, former second-round pick, comes here on a 1-year deal. Maybe he impresses enough. You have a few young players, Danny Gray, a lot of speed. Giles Jackson made the team after a tryout, but there's just kind of not a lot of depth there right now at receiver.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of figure Jahan Dotson is as close to a lock as you can. I think he is a lock just because, like, who is there who could take his place? And Johnny Wilson's a good blocker. I'm not sure he's a high volume receiver. Anais, I just don't know what I have a hard time believing both of those guys are going to stick. But if you lined them up 1 through 5, they would be 4 and 5 right now.
So, do you think like Terrace Marshall has a shot to get in there? Like, who do you think would be if both of those guys don't stick, who's in?
I mean, it's the same question you asked me about, you know, um, earlier. I think the roster is fluid, and how he's going to bring guys in throughout training camp. And if I say it, it's going to be, it's like with running back, like it won't be these guys. Doesn't mean I can tell you how he's going to bring in, but I just don't think both
So
those guys.
but you think it'll be someone who's not on the roster?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but I think Dotson is a lock. I really do. Like if they had a bunch of young like mid range draft picks or you know s- like guys who had some sort of football resume, then all right, maybe they can compete for that 3 spot. But there's really nobody on the roster now who I can reasonably expect to compete for the 3. So that's why I think he's a lock.
This time last year, the Eagles had quite a few veterans, right? They had Paris Campbell. Did they still have Devontae Parker? I
He
don't
was
remember when
gone
he retired.
early. I
And
think he might have been
then they had John Ross coming off a
John
tryout. They
Ross.
signed him. So maybe the fact that they don't have as many veterans tells you they trust those second year guys a little bit more.
It
Johnny
might.
Wilson and Naismith.
It might. It's possible.
So you've got them adding another running back and another receiver.
I do.
Interesting. Uh, it would kind of go against the offseason a little bit, but if they look at it and say, hey, there's holes, maybe they would try to fill them. It's
And
funny.
it could be a deal where like, let's see what these guys look like in camp. And then, we can always go get somebody.
Sure. Uh, I don't. The receiver thing's weird because like how much is your 4th and 5th receiver going to play? Probably not a lot. the thing that worries you is like, all right, what happens if there's an injury? And, say you're missing AJ for 3 weeks, all of
which
a sudden,
happened
like,
last
huh?
which happened last year.
Sure. Yeah. All of a sudden you're looking at it like, well, all right, you bump Dotson up, you feel okay about that, but then who's taking his snaps? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I think that's why I feel like Ainias and Johnny Wilson won't both be here. So, which one of those guys gives you more if they're not going to be catching the ball? Johnny Wilson's such a good blocker. I think he's the guy that, to me, projects to be the next guy. And I just don't know if you keep both those guys. Maybe Ainias goes on the practice squad. You want to keep him around. He caught the ball well in that Giants game. He had a few catches, but one of those guys might make a nice jump in training camp. Year 2 for wide receivers it's a big jump year. So uh, we always keep an eye on those guys during camp.
Yeah, Nice is someone I was really excited about when they drafted him. I really liked him at Texas A&M as a receiver and as a return man. And then he had that stress fracture, so he missed all the spring. Then he got out there in the summer, and it was bad. He had like a really rough summer. He finally started to turn it around toward the end of camp, and then he had the injury, he missed some time. A full offseason, healthy Anaya Smith. Let's actually see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Okay. Tight end, I kept 2, Dallas Goedert and Grant Calcaterra. This is exactly what they did last year. Now, they probably have more talent overall at the position this year because they added Harrison Bryant, they added Kylan Granson, they still have EJ Jenkins, they have Cameron Latu and Nick Muse on the team. I still think 2 makes sense if they're looking to find a roster spot, because then you can kind of see, all right, well, if Bryant or Granson or EJ Jenkins gets through, we'll get a couple of them on the practice squad, and you kind of go third tight end by committee.
Yeah, I think that roster spot's too valuable to use on a third tight end that you can get to the practice squad anyway. And
Maybe I don't know. Someone might claim a Harrison Bryant.
somebody might. I doubt it, but if they do, there's other guys. Maybe he'll be that much better than the other 2 guys you mentioned, but I doubt it. So if you do lose a guy, you still have the equivalent that you can get on the practice squad and have him available. So I just think that third tight end spot is going to be on the practice squad, and I agree that it's going to be Goddard and Calcaterra.
The only thing, like having veterans in that role instead of an EJ Jenkins, maybe that changes it a little bit. I doubt it. In fact, maybe you don't want to guarantee the roster or the salary for the year. Maybe you play that game with these veteran tight ends and you just keep them around. But yeah, I think if you're looking for a roster spot, that's an easy way to kind of find one.
I agree.
Okay. Offensive line, I kept 10.
Okay.
I'll go through the 10. I have the 5 starters, and I kept Tyler Steen as a starter for now. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, Lane Johnson. Then my 5 backups were Kenyon Green, Trevor Keegan, Drew Kendall, Miles Hinton, and Kendall Lamb. This was tough. This is one where I think it really is very fluid for these backup spots. I had Matt Pryor, Cameron Williams, Darian Kennard, Brett Toth, Laken Vakalehi, and Holland Pierce, all getting cut or moved or whatever. Where are you on this position, offensive line?
Give me the 5 backups again.
Kenyon Green, Trevor Keegan, Drew Kendall, Miles Hinton, Kendall Lamb.
So 5 new guys.
Well, Trevor Keegan was on the roster last
year. Yeah, my bad. He's relatively new. That they want to upgrade that area back up, especially interior. I like those names. I'm not so sure about Keegan. I don't know what they think of him. But yeah, I think that all makes sense. Kenyon Green's the one guy. Like if he doesn't win that right guard job, I think there's a chance he won't be here.
Interesting.
Out of those guys, he's the one. I just wonder about. And I mean, he just has not been a very good player. Maybe there's obviously he was a high pick. There's something at some point that really a lot of teams liked, but Do you want him as a backup if he doesn't win the starting right guard job? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
And
don't
then you're
know.
gonna
I don't know enough about him to say like. Normally, when you're talking about if a guy doesn't win the starter job and you don't want him as a backup, is for like locker room reasons. I don't know anything about him.
Oh, yeah, I don't think that's I think there might be something better out there. I think he might be really bad in camp. Now, I could be wrong, but just based on his history, I think this is a reclamation project with nothing to lose, and so often those just don't work out.
Okay.
And he's been a huge disappointment for 3 years. One of those years he didn't play. I could see him not being here.
Now, the toughest cuts were Matt Pryor and Cameron Williams. Pryor played pretty well last year for the
Yeah, he
Bears.
did. Yeah.
He's someone who gives you some flexibility, guard, tackle. I'd like to keep him on the team. I don't think they'll keep 11 offensive linemen. Last year they kept 9 out of camp. It's kind of surprising. They've really trimmed the number they keep. It used to be they kept over 10. They're not doing that these days because they have so much. They like the idea of having versatility with those players. But Matt Pryor's one I could see sticking. I had Cameron Williams getting cut because I have a hard time believing all 3 day 3 offensive linemen
Right.
are going to make the team, and he's the one who probably needs the most in terms of development. He's the youngest. He has the least college experience, least college diversity in terms of versatility. So I think he'd be the most likely to not make the roster of those 3.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. Again, you get him on the practice squad, no one's gonna claim him. Uh, I like the Matt Pryor. I think I might keep him over Kenyon Green. I think he's still a decent player. He's played a lot of football. Um, unspectacular, but pretty solid, and he's bounced around a little bit. Um, I think he's got a chance to stick.
Yeah, it is funny though. We talk about him having versatility, and it's like I don't know if he really does because when we've seen him, at least when we've seen him play tackle, it's been pretty ugly. So like sometimes I laugh at the versatility talk. Like, yeah, he can play there, but if he's not good there, what good is the, the versatility if he's a turnstile? I think he really is a guard.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's why you keep him, is his guard ability.
Okay.
He could play tackle in an emergency.
And then we'll see about Kendall Lamb. He's a over 30 offensive lineman coming off back surgery.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he's not looking healthy or doesn't look like the same guy before. Miles Hinton has a heck of a summer. Could he be the swing tackle? And it makes Lamb expendable? Very possible. But it's why I do this now, right? You set a baseline and then you let it play out a little bit.
That's fair. And I think
Okay.
that's the case with a lot of these veteran one-year guys. You know, if I think a good chunk of them are not gonna be here. You bring them in, you have nothing to lose, and if they're not what you thought they were, they're gone.
Okay. Let's take a little break. We'll get to defense and then a bunch of other stuff on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
We're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan, Reuben Frank, and Dave Zangaro. Let's flip to defense, Rube. Defensive tackle. I kept 5 for now. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ujima, Ty Robinson, and Thomas Booker, the 4th. I feel pretty good about this group. Honestly, I think the top
He'd be the
4.
5th.
What was that?
He would be the 5th. I'm really sorry. All right.
It's not a bad joke.
It was terrible. Booker's the one question mark for me. He did play considerable amount. He did some good things early. We'll see. But
The top 4 are locks, though, right?
yeah, they have 4 locks. No question.
I guess a 4th round pick isn't always, but Robinson feels pretty safe.
Who's the last 4th round pick that didn't make the team?
Yeah,
Pumphrey?
it's been a long time.
He probably even made the team and just didn't play that first year.
Mhm.
I'll look that up. But yeah, I think a 4th round pick is pretty much, especially when you don't have
Yeah.
uh, a 3. So, um, yeah, that makes the most sense. I'm not sure about Booker.
I
Um,
like Booker. I thought he gave him something. You're
he
right.
did.
Early last year, honestly, Booker kind of kept them afloat a little bit for a while. Like there was a period where the defense wasn't playing very well. And you're like, well, at least Thomas Booker's giving you something, which is very funny when you look at the end of the season, how good that defense was that we were talking like that in like week 2.
Right. Um, Somebody like Gabe Hall, Byron Young, a couple names, guys who were here last year.
Yeah, they're the only other 2 defensive tackles on the roster.
Yeah. Do you have a
Byron
preference?
Young was a 3rd round pick, right?
It's the other Byron Young.
Who's been good. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Gabe Hall's been around. So I don't think
Gabe
Booker's a
Hall is
lock.
somebody I kind of expected more out of as an undrafted rookie last year. We never really saw much
Yeah.
out of Baylor.
Yeah. So I think all those guys are in the mix for that last spot, and they'll all get some reps and see how it sorts out. I don't. Do you think Booker's in the lead though? I guess because he played.
Yeah, I think he definitely among those 3, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who else would be?
Yeah. Nobody.
Yeah. Okay. Edge rusher. Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, Aziz Ojolari, Josh Uche, Antoine Powell Ryland, and Patrick Johnson. This was a tough one to figure out.
Yeah. There's one name I didn't hear there.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Huff.
Yeah, and you and I disagree on this. I am still of the belief that he will not be here when the season starts.
That's fair. I think he will be. I think they'll give him, like, why not give him a chance the first month of the season and see if there's something there. Um, you got to pay him a fortune either way.
Yeah,
Um,
so the way I look at Bryce Huff, and he's obviously the reason this is a tough decision. The other guys, will Josh Uche make it? Maybe not. Maybe will I don't know. Um, will Antoine Powell Ryland make it? 6th round pick, not a guarantee. Josh Huff's really the one that has the most intrigue here because they're paying him $17 million a season. I honestly think the only reason he hasn't been traded yet is because of the contract implications of it. After June 1st, that becomes more palatable, getting rid of him. I mean, based on what we saw last year, it just doesn't seem like a good fit. And I was kind of bullish on the move when they made it. I think that in the right system, in the right role, he can be a somewhat effective player. I just don't think Vic likes him in his defense.
I think that's true, but I also think Vic is someone who's going to give the kid every opportunity to show that that's not the player he is. And he got hurt last year, missed some time. He was actually starting to, I thought, play a little better when he got hurt. Um, so I think he'll be here. I think he'll be here going into the season, and then
Healthy scratch in the Super Bowl.
I get that. I get that. But you also look, I mean, BG retired, you lost Sweat. So there's some question. This is a guy who had 10, double digit sacks 2 years ago. So I think they'll give him every opportunity to show that what we saw last year is not the player he is. And I don't know why you wouldn't, because like unless somebody offers you something, then yeah, you're gonna take that. But um if there's any chance you can get something out of him, let's see what he looks like in camp and then make that call.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying they're gonna trade him before camp. I'm kind of looking into the crystal ball here for September 4th when they play a
Right.
football game. And like, look, maybe he has a good camp. Maybe he has some sort of epiphany in Vic's system. All of a sudden, Vic goes, okay, yeah, now I see it. I still don't think he's ever going to be a 3-down type of guy. I think you're trying to recoup your value as a situational edge rusher. And I don't know, man, if he's not playing a lot, I think it's tough to have a guy making 17 million a season as like a very, very, very situational player.
Well, I mean, if he's the third pass rusher, which I think is the that's the ceiling this year, then wouldn't you rather keep him around? Like, say he gets 6 sacks. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
Is
don't
that
think he will be the third pass rusher.
Yeah, well, who do you think will be?
Uh, it depending on who the starters are, either Jalen Hunt or Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna be Jalik starting. Um, I don't I guess I just don't have that much more confidence in Azeez Ojulari than I have in Bryce Huff. I mean,
Yeah,
Azeez
look, and
Ojulari was
yeah,
was not a great player either.
he's been good. He's been injured. Uh, for me, this is more about what I've seen, and what I've seen is that it just doesn't seem like Vic and Bryce Huff are on the same page.
It's all fair, and we all saw that. I'm just saying sometimes in year 2, you know, guys make a big jump, so maybe he will. It doesn't even have he just has to be functional, and you'd rather keep him than trade him unless somebody offers you something. I don't know what you can get for him
I don't think
now.
it would be like a big offer. I think it would be get it off the books,
Yeah, well,
admit your mistake, and move on.
Howie's done that in the past, certainly.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look back, it's we don't even talk about Bryce Huff. That was their biggest free agent signing in the year they won the Super Bowl, and he
Yeah.
was a healthy scratch on Super Bowl Sunday. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. It is. I guess I just haven't totally given up on him, and you have, and that's totally fair, totally valid.
Oh, I don't know if this is me giving up on him personally. I think this is me looking at the situation and thinking maybe Vic is giving up on him.
But you have too. I mean, come on.
No, I think he could go somewhere and be productive.
But I'm saying you've given up on him as an Eagle. You don't
Yeah,
think there's any chance because, yeah,
yeah,
I mean, you have him off your roster, and that's valid. I think maybe they can salvage something out of him.
maybe. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. That's going to be fun to watch this summer.
It will.
At linebacker, I kept 4. Nakobe Dean was not one of them. I have him on the pup, which is definitely a projection, but based on what we know about that injury, the significance of it, the rehab time normally associated with it, that's where I started him off. The 4 on the roster, and this is inside linebacker, Zach Bond, Jihad Campbell, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and Smile Mondin Jr., Lance Dixon, Dallas Gant out, Nakobe Dean on pup.
Yeah, that's how I would line them up. The only thing that would possibly change that is if Nakobe is ready, or if they think he might be ready week 2 or something, week 3. But
Or
I
if
think
Campbell isn't ready.
isn't ready. Yeah, and Nakobe is. Now, if neither one is ready, now you got to figure some things out and hope Jeremiah Trotter Jr. can keep things going until those guys get back.
Maybe
Which he
you
might.
check in on Cincinnati and make sure Oren Burks is going to make that roster.
Yeah, boy, that was a surprising one for me because I mean, if he was here, you look at the way it's lining up. I mean, they probably. I mean, he would have a really good opportunity to play, but he maybe he'll get that in Cincinnati
But I
too.
actually kind of feel good about their depth at linebacker.
Yeah, if with everyone healthy, you do. Yeah, when everyone is healthy.
You know, I'm not. I'm curious to see Trot in a bigger role if that ends up happening. I think Smile Mondin gives you like a decent coverage linebacker that deep in the draft. Now we haven't seen it in the NFL, but I like the skill set there. I don't know how high the ceiling is for him as like a full-time starting linebacker, but I think he could give you something. All right, and at corner, Rube, I kept 6 of them: Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson, Mac McWilliams, and Eli Ricks. I felt pretty good about this position.
I think there's a lot of talent there, obviously up top, but yeah, it's a young group. Other than Adoree Jackson, it's a young group, but man, they can run, they can cover. I like that you kept Eli Ricks on there. I think they like him, and he's still a young guy.
He's been around for a reason, right? Like they didn't really have any real reason to keep him last year. He wasn't going to play, but I think Howie is just not going to get rid of young, talented cornerbacks.
Yeah, they're hard to find, and they got a few of them now. So Mac McWilliams, we'll see where he fits in, but I would have kept him as well. So I like this group.
And then at safety, I kept 4: Reed Blankenship, Drew Makuba, Sidney Brown, and Tristan McCollum. I had McCollum as the last one in. if you want to go with, an Andre Sam or a Lewis Seen or a Maxon Hook, undrafted rookie, I get that. I think Seen is exciting. We all want to watch him in training camp and see if there's any of that talent that was there when he was a first round pick. But I couldn't keep him. He hasn't played. He's played like 11 games in the NFL. It's intriguing. You hope there's some ceiling left there, but I didn't keep him on this roster.
Yeah, it's it's a fun thought. The guy was a high pick. He went to Georgia, so there's that. But yeah, I'd be surprised if he can get his career back on track or on track, really, not back on track. I don't know about Tristan McCollum. Um, Maxon Hook's an interesting guy. I might even put him there in that last spot over Tristan McCollum. He didn't show me he got an opportunity and didn't do a lot with it. Um, Not a super physical guy, can run a little. So I'm gonna go with one of the other guys. I don't think it'll be seen. Andre Sam was around, and there was a guy in his locker pretty much all year visiting him. Um, yeah, I'm gonna go with the undrafted rookie.
Okay. Yeah, that's more of a, like the devil versus don't know, I guess.
Exactly.
For me, Tristan McCollum at least gives you a really high level of special teams play, which sometimes does really matter when you're trying to finalize the roster.
Maxon Hook was he Quignon's roommate at Toledo? I believe.
I don't know.
I think he was.
Okay,
So maybe that's worth a point or two.
I don't think so. I don't think that's how
Probably
that
not.
works. And then the specialists, I actually have 4 specialists this year because you have Jake Elliott, Braden Mann, Charlie Hewlett. I kept Avery Williams as the return specialist. He doesn't have an official position outside of that. We know he's going to play on offense a little bit, but Nick Sirianni just seemed. I was so thrown at the owners' meetings when Sirianni started to heap praise on Avery Williams and how excited he was, that maybe that's sticking with me too much, but I think he's going to be on the roster.
That's usually a pretty good sign, though. It tells you that he's on Nick's mind, and if he's here, they'll probably figure some small role out on offense. I would think something to do. Give him some. He's got a little juice to him, so kind of like. I mean, it's hard to just carry a guy as a returner. I mean, you can do it, but if you can get something else out of him, that certainly helps. But yeah, I think he'll be here. Covey just signed with the Rams a couple of days ago, yesterday maybe. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, good. That's
And
my
there's
roster.
really nowhere else to put him. So
Yeah, that was
you
my
put him there.
53. I think our biggest disagreement is probably on Bryce Huff.
Yeah, yeah, and that's going to go on all summer. It's going to be fun.
It will be fun. Every time he makes a play in camp, you're going to look at me and go, yep, he's sticking around.
You know it.
And every time Vic rolls his eyes and you're like, well, maybe that was directed at Bryce.
Probably.
Real quick, I wanted to get your take on the George Pickens trade to Dallas. Talented player, 52nd overall pick a couple years ago, has had some solid production in the NFL.
2
But
years ago, he was really good.
Yeah, there's also a reason he was being traded.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not the only wide receiver who, acts out when he's not getting the ball. It's kind of a common thing, but there's a reason Pittsburgh didn't want him around. And look, I think it makes Dallas better on paper. Dak hasn't really had that 1-2 wide receiver thing since Amari Cooper and CD were together. So it gives him a good number 2. But I just don't know if he's one of those guys who's more trouble than he's worth. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think if he's not getting the ball, it can get ugly with him. So, and I think that's why he's not with the Steelers anymore. Sometimes you have a guy that's talented enough that you just accept it and deal with it. I'm not sure he's quite there. I think he's very good. He hasn't made a Pro Bowl yet. He had the 1,000-yard season 2 years ago. I think he's really good. And with Dak, look, they throw the ball a lot. Maybe he'll have a big time year. Like I said, on paper, I think it really helps him, but we'll see what the flip side of that is if things go bad. But he's also in a contract year, and sometimes that tends to bring out the best in guys,
Yeah,
or sometimes it brings out the worst.
I think from a purely football standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. He's a big-bodied X receiver to pair with CD, and they can move CD around the rest of the formation. Uh, I think from a football perspective, it makes a ton of sense.
And they didn't give
But
much up, was it? They gave up a 3 and a 5 and got a 6 back along with the player.
it was a 3 and a 5, yeah, and a future. So it was a 2026 third rounder and a 2027 fifth to Pittsburgh for Pickens and a 2027 sixth. So really, the next year third rounder for him, and then a pick swap in 27. So yeah, man, like he's going into that contract year to a team now that drags its feet paying people. It just feels very combustible.
Well, there's no way he's gonna be in Dallas in 26. I mean, because if he has a really good year, he's gonna wanna go somewhere else because they're not gonna pay him. And if he doesn't, then they're not gonna wanna resign him.
It'd be
So,
funny if they somehow paid him before Micah.
yeah, that would be hilarious. Would not be, the way Jerry runs things down there, you never know. Um, I think he's capable of having a big time season. I just we'll see what it looks like.
He's very talented.
He really is.
I think at times he was a net negative though in Pittsburgh.
I think that's true. I mean, 2 years ago, he averaged 18 yards a catch. I mean, that's big time down the field production. You don't get many guys these days averaging that. So that's like a Deshaun type of number. So yeah, the talent's there, the ability's there. He's still a young guy. Uh, Things just go wrong in Dallas, though. you know, things
And
just
Pittsburgh gets rid of these guys before they go too crazy a lot of the time.
yeah, yeah, they do, and they always have.
hmm Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm very fascinated to see. Dallas is always just like an interesting watch from afar,
yeah,
just to see what's going on down there, and this will kind of add to the circus atmosphere a little bit.
always. That's so what makes them fun.
Before we get the questions, I wanted to mention as we record this on May 8th, Lane Johnson's 35th birthday. He's played at a really high level. He has a chance to kind of go into history a little bit with the Eagles in terms of players playing at this age or older.
Yeah.
There have been just 5 since 2000 who have started 10 plus games at age 35 or above. Do you think you know them?
No, I just looked that up not too long ago, but I forgot. Obviously, JP is one of them.
hmm
Um,
3 of them are
maybe
offensive linemen.
how many?
3 of the
3 of
4.
them. Evan Mathis, maybe?
No,
Not Evan Mathis. Since 2000, you
since
said?
2000. One's
Um,
very obvious.
yeah, well, not to me. Just tell me, because people don't wanna sit here watching me think. It's a scary thing to
I
see.
feel like that's what we do a lot. Jason Kelsey,
Oh, yeah, I forgot about him.
Brian Dawkins, and John Runyon both in
I
2008.
was gonna say Runyon. Yeah, I was gonna say Runyon. Um, he's playing as well as he ever has. I mean, really. And I'm not gonna put a year on it, like, say he can only play 2 more years at this level. I just don't know. He takes great care of himself. He's relatively healthy. He doesn't have any, since he got that ankle all straightened out, which really kinda set his career back. I mean, that lingered for a long time. He's finally past that. Um, uh, in my mind, he can just keep playing.
Yeah, and it's offensive line is a position where we've seen guys play into their mid to late 30s. This one was surprising to me. Since 2000, I just use 2000 as kind of a nice little mark there, a new century. 16 offensive linemen have had Pro Bowl seasons at age 35 or above in the
Yeah,
league.
it doesn't surprise me if you take care because we've seen it here. You mentioned Kelsey, Runyon, JP, still a really good player in his mid-30s. Yeah, it's, uh it's one position where because, you have to be athletic and move, but you don't have to run, like, you don't have to sprint, and that's when guys start losing that speed, but if if you're a corner or safety, a running back, a receiver, yeah. But as a lineman, you got to be healthy. You got to be able to move, but you don't have to protect that 4.3 speed or anything. So
Mhm.
he can play indefinitely the way I see it.
Want to
I
do
don't know if
some
he wants
questions?
to. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think he wants to play forever. He's talked about finishing out this contract though, 3 more seasons.
Yeah. Which is great news for Eagles fans.
Questions?
Do I have any questions for you? Is that what you're asking me?
I'm not.
Let's
I'm
take some
asking.
questions. Yes.
Eagle-Eye at NBCUni.com. QR code is on the screen. First one is from Brandon. Rube, as the resident Eagles historian, I'd love to hear if you two can name any
Who
former
doesn't know how old Jason Kelsey was when he retired? But yes, go ahead.
if you can name any former Eagle with a bigger discrepancy between his career numbers and what we know his talent level to be. Every year we predict a huge season for Goddard, and either injuries or the QB has kept him from having one. I can't name anyone who played this long at this level without the numbers to show for it.
He's had good numbers.
Good numbers, not elite numbers.
The he had 2 700-yard seasons. He's had 5. You know, it's an interesting stat about Dallas Goedert. Since 2019, he's played the 23rd most games among all tight ends. Yet he has the 5th most games with 50 or more yards. He's just he's just a guy that's going to produce when he's out there and when he's healthy. Yeah, I don't look at him in that way because I think he's been. I mean, I don't think his career is a disappointment. The postseason production, it's not like he's had seasons where he's played 5 games. Um, as long as he's giving you 12, 13 games a year, 10, 12, whatever that number is, and 5, 6, 700 yards, is that like if he put a full season together, we know he could have 1,000 yards, but it's not like he's got 226. He's got 5, 6, 700. So I don't look at him like that, if that makes
Brandon
sense.
Rube rejects the premise of your question. We're moving on to Mark.
I mean, it's a fair question. I don't agree. But
Uh,
you know what I mean? Like he's close enough to that ceiling
I
that
do,
I
yeah.
don't think
I still think we could answer the question if there's a player
I
with
can't.
a discrepancy between their numbers and their talent level. So basically, I think this means like a guy who gets hurt, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Um, I mean, a guy whose career ended, like if only he could have stayed healthy, Carson Wentz.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, Sean Andrews, right? Like talent level was really high and never got the career we expected.
2-time All-Pro or 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time first team All-Pro. What a player he was. I don't think it was all the back, though. I think there are other things going on.
Sure, but it's still discrepancy between.
Sure. Yeah, but he was a first team All-Pro and a 2-time Pro Bowler.
Okay.
So, yeah. But it's a good question. I mean, it is a good question. I'm gonna think about that.
All right. Next one is from Mark. Question for Rube. Now that Miles Hinton is an Eagle, I was curious why his father, Chris Hinton, hasn't been considered more seriously for the Hall of Fame. He seems to have the resume for it. Is it just because he was traded for John Elway?
Yeah, he's got the resume. I think he was only a one-time first team All-Pro. Is that right, Dave?
I believe
One.
so. Yeah. I can look it up while
And
you're talking.
that's for the voters, and I'm not one of them. That is, I mean, you're looking first at team of the decade, then you're looking at all pros, then you're looking at Pro Bowls and championships. 7-time Pro Bowler, I believe.
7-time Pro Bowler, 1-time first team All Pro, 2-time second team All Pro.
Yeah, so really similar to Jason Peters. I think he had more Jason Peters had 9 Pro Bowls and 1 first team All Pro.
Yeah, but JP had a lot of second team All Pro, I believe.
Yeah, but he should be in the mix, and he's not. So they get
Peters,
things wrong.
2-time first team All Pro, 4-time second team All Pro.
JP,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's got a better resume.
And
He
it's
will
tough
get.
because we're talking about a statless position. So a lot of times the
Yeah,
accolades end up, especially for voters who haven't really studied these guys play, it comes down to hearsay or accolades.
and that's the problem with the way it's set up. Like by the time guys are eligible, the people that that watched their career, and especially like his best years were early with the Colts, right? So like 85 to 90. And then he played like another 7 years. So how many of the voters actually were watching the Colts in the mid 80s? I don't know. I don't think a lot of them. So yeah, you really need a good guy to stand up for you and explain. I think it's going to help that like now you have like analytics sites that can break things down a little more for offensive linemen, but you didn't have that in the 80s. But I think he's a good candidate.
Next one from Andrew. Hey boys, I live in Frisco, Texas, about quarter of a mile from the Star since it opened, and have loved every minute of it. My family and friends from Philly can't understand how I tolerate it, but there's nothing better than listening to Cowboys radio for the past few seasons. While I hate giving Jerry any kudos for what he's built, the Star is cool, and even though my wife says I like to create trouble, I relish wearing my Eagles championship shirts and hats there. My question for you is, people always say the biggest jump for players is between the first and second season, but it's hard to believe Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean can do better than last year. How do you think their sophomore seasons will unfold?
Yeah, and I actually kind of disagree a little bit because you think about how many interceptions Q dropped, and I think that'll be the next step for him. And he got 2 in the postseason, right? I believe he got 2. Um, I'd like to see him catch those balls. But yeah, look, there's not
I'll have a better
room.
shot without CJ in the
That's true.
secondary with him.
But yeah, I think there's room for improvement for both those guys. And as good as they were as rookies, they're gonna keep getting better. And it might not be wholesale giant leaps from where they are because they're just so good right now, but no reason they can't keep getting better.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the Zach Bond conversation. And the question I asked Zach after he got his contract was like, can you be better than you were last year? Which sounds like a ridiculous question for a guy who was an all pro and like the best linebacker in the league. But year one in the defense, this is now year two in a defense, especially, you know, Quinyon as an outside corner. Not that it doesn't change from defense to defense, but a lot of times you're doing your own thing out there. You're covering a receiver, you're playing off coverage or whatever, but like you're doing your own thing. For a linebacker and for a nickel corner, they were already so good at passing off zones and zone coverage. Like they're going to get better at that. The communication is going to be better between the two of them and anyone else who's in the middle of that field. So yeah, I think especially for Cooper, I'm excited to see him grow in this defense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, he didn't have any picks in the regular season either, right? I think Super Bowl was his first one.
And
So
his first and only pick.
what a thing.
Last one today from Randy. My question is about former and current Eagle Matt Pryor. I'm a little puzzled as to why he's being seen as a trivial addition. Top Philly writers have been saying consistently since he was signed that he'll be battling to make the roster, and have treated the right guard position as a competition between Tyler Steen and Kenyon Green and perhaps a draft pick. Why should any of this be true? I know Pro Football Focus isn't perfect, but they rated Pryor slightly higher or slightly above average among starting guards in a season where he started 15 games and played over 1,000 snaps for Chicago. While on the one hand, age-related decline is always possible since he's only 30, which is not old for an offensive lineman. And so since he'll be getting a graduate education from Stoughton University, it's not hard to imagine him improving slightly and being as good as Becton was last year. Thoughts on Matt Pryor?
Yeah, well said, well stated. He played 1,006 snaps last year, so he did play over 1,000. Um, he's been coached by Stout. He was here for what, 2 years, 3 years, right? He didn't play his rookie year, so he was here 3 years with Stout. I think that helps him, gives him a little head start.
He got
I think
traded before his last year here.
he got traded before his last year here.
Yeah, he was under contract and they traded him.
Yeah, but I'm just saying he was here in 18 as
Mhm.
a rookie and didn't play.
Okay.
And then he played here in 19 and 20. So he's here 3 years, I believe. But anyway, I think he's in that mix at right guard. I'm just not I'm not convinced either of the other guys is the best option. So I mean, You didn't have him on your 53, right? You had him off.
I did, and he was the one I struggled with because I think there is a chance he makes the team.
Yeah, and there's a chance he starts. So played right guard last year in Indy, I believe. So yeah, he's had a nice career for himself as a what, a 6th-round pick.
Rank those 3 from most likely to least likely starting right guard week 1.
I think Steen's most likely.
Mhm.
I'm going to put Pryor 2nd and Kenyon Green 3rd.
I'd reverse those 2, but I understand why you'd have him there.
Yeah, I mean Pryor was better last year than Green was.
Absolutely.
So yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Okay. If you have a question for us, eagle-eye at nbcuni.com. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube.
Yes, Dave.
Any final thoughts?
No.
That's an upset. All right. For Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. This has been Eagle Eye, presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.